So before I get into this video, I want to give a quick shout out to my Twitch channel and my Discord server. Link to them is in the description down below. Feel free to check it out. I would really appreciate it, guys. Hello everybody. Alright, so today is the day I finally make an updated version of my Season 12 Shaco guide. I'm currently the highest ranked Shaco on EOS, sitting at 706 LP, which is very close to Challenger. I will be going over the runes, the items, the skill order, and the jungle path, so stay tuned. Okay, so let's start with the 80 Shaco rune page. Now for 80 Shaco, the runes haven't really changed at all for the last couple of months, but basically what you want to be running is Hail of Blades as your keystone. You want to go Cheap Shot. You could make the argument that Sudden Impact is better. I disagree. I think Cheap Shot allows you to deal more damage throughout the entire game. And if you look at the stats of the average game, then this will also be correct. Now second, you want to go Eyeball Collection. You could run stuff like Zombie Ward or Ghost Poro if you want to. I think that for an assassin though, Eyeball Collection is the much preferred choice. Now down here, you have only really one option, which is Relentless Hunter. It gives you more movement speed, which is definitely nice to be around the map quicker. It allows you to clear faster, it allows you to gank more, and it also allows you to travel a further distance during your stealth, which is really important in the mid and late game to assassinate targets reliably. The reason I go Sorcery secondary is because I like having as much damage as possible, because I feel like at the moment Shaco doesn't have too much damage, which is why I'm trying to kind of balance that out by getting more 80 from my runes. You could also be running Inspiration secondary. Here you have three different choices that are very good. I think Futures Market and Approach Velocity is what I would be running if I had to run Inspiration. You can also run Free Boots if you want to, and then substitute Futures Market for that. For the mini runes, there isn't really much variation. You have to run attack speed, adaptive force, and health because it's mathematically better than armor. Now for AP Shaco, I've been running a bit of a different setup recently. I've done a lot of testing and I think I like it this way a lot more than I did the other rune page. Because of how items changed in Season 12, Cosmic Drive isn't really an option anymore, which means we don't have enough CDR in our items, which means we now have to run as much CDR as we can in our rune page. Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection is pretty much standard for AP Shaco. So is Ultimate Hunter. You can, if you really want to, run Relentless Hunter if you feel like you need the extra movement speed. I personally feel like having ult up, especially in the early game where this rune kind of shines, or mid game, is a lot more important to me, gives me more objective control. And on AP Shaco, your ultimate is kind of important in the early to mid game because you don't really have that much damage on your other spells. So playing around your Clone Explosion or playing around having an extra Shaco hit the enemies is somewhat important to me. Secondary, you want to run Sorcery. There isn't really much, you can change about that because we need Transcendence. Transcendence is very important because we need the extra ability haste, as I said earlier, and because kills or assists actually refund some of the cooldown that we have, which is really cool because in the mid and late game this becomes super powerful in a longer team fight. Now you can, if you really want to, swap out the Gathering Storm, which I think is probably the best option in here, for something like Nimbus Cloak. This allows you to have a bit more early game pressure when running Ignite or Smite, gives you a bit more movement speed, helps you stick to your targets, especially again in the early game, but usually this is not very needed, and I like to have a more scaling approach, which is why I think Gathering Storm, even at 20 minutes offering you 24 AP, is pretty huge. Now for the mini runes, again, ability haste is very needed. We do need that as much as we can because we don't really have much from our items anymore. Then you want to go adaptive damage and of course health again because it is mathematically better than armor. So now the juicy part. This is probably what most people are interested in. Now what do you build, SP? What is your current build? That's probably the question I get asked the most. I used to run the no mythic crit build, which I think is still probably one of the best builds, but at the moment I have a new favorite build, which is the Kraken Slayer build. I know, a lot of people used to ask me about Kraken Slayer, and I would say it's not a very good build, because the build order in which people would build it was very shit, was very bad. I didn't like the build. But this build is, I think, from the Brazilian server. Somebody came up with this. And I really like it because it fixes all the problems that the Kraken Slayer usually had. Because Kraken Slayer on paper has the biggest DPS, which is definitely something we're interested in. Let's get into the build. First of all, Ember Knife has more dueling power, has more raw damage. It reduces damage that you take from enemies, which I think makes this a lot more valuable than the Blue Smite, especially because this build is not only oriented around one-shotting. Sure, you can still go Blue Smite if you really want to, if one-shotting is all you care about, but I think you're better off building no mythic build, and if you want to know more about that, check out my previous videos. You can skip out on a potion. I really like having a potion because I like to play a bit more aggressive, I like to play a bit more daring, especially in the early game, where having a potion is super beneficial. Get the yellow trinket for early game wardage to make sure you don't get invaded. So in your first back, preferably the perfect first back would be a serrated dirk. This is usually done when full clearing and then getting a kill, or maybe taking 2 more camps out of the enemy jungle after your full clear. But sometimes you won't get the serrated dirk first back. In that case, try to get boots, or 2 longswords, or boots and longsword, or maybe boots and dagger, depending on how much gold you have. But usually you want to get boots and longsword, or double longsword if you can. Of course, always make sure to get the red trinket, because the red trinket is really important for setting up ganks, knowing where people have vision, and for stuff like invading. Now this is where the build kind of changes, and this is what I really like about this build. You actually rush Ghostblade. Now Ghostblade is a super strong item in the early game. It falls off quite heavily later on, but in the early game it's really powerful. It gives you movement speed out of combat, it gives you an active that gives you movement speed, it gives you spell haste, it gives you lethality, and it gives you attack damage. Sure, it costs 3000 gold, but the cool thing is we already have the serrated dirk as our main component in the early game. So we don't buy the serrated dirk just so we can build Ghostblade, but we actually buy the serrated dirk because we need it, because it makes our early game so much stronger and it's a key component in our build. So that way, the Ghostblade still is, well, the same price, but it's actually so much more valuable for us in that way. After you finish your Ghostblade, you can also finish your tier 2 boots. In this case, in 99% of the games you want Berserker Greaves for more DPS. After Ghostblade and Berserker Greaves, you want to go the main star of this build, which is Kraken Slayer. Now Kraken Slayer is really cool because it allows you to one-shot people, not quite as fast as the No Mythic build, but decently fast. And it also allows you to shred tanks, shred bruisers, and you still win 99% of the 1v1s, even though you wouldn't with the No Mythic build, for example. So this is where the build really shines. It's super versatile and it does everything pretty well. It doesn't excel at anything, but it's super good at pretty much everything. So that's really nice about this build. Now if you don't have enough gold to build the components, you know, get a pickaxe or get a pickaxe and a longsword. If you can, finish the Noon Quiver, it's really nice. Or just, you know, pick a pickaxe and a dagger, pickaxe and longsword. But never really build the cloak. You kind of want to save that until the very last. So never build this. Build the pickaxe or the Noon Quiver or the components of Noon Quiver. Now after Ghostblade and Kraken Slayer, you have a couple of options. It depends on what you want to achieve. Now if the enemy team has multiple squishy champions that don't have a lot of armor and you want as much raw damage and as much raw burst as you can, then Essence Reaver is a fantastic item. It offers you a lot of burst, it offers you free mana, it offers you extra spell haste, and it's very cheap. So the honor damage, super nice, the stats, pretty good, and it is a must buy if all you want to do is just one shot. In most cases though, I like to go for LDR third. The reason I do that is because I think armor pen is super valuable, and especially in higher elo, people like to build armor quite early on with stuff like Tabis or Dastans or Zhonya's to itemize against me. So in that case, having that extra armor pen is really helpful. And the cool thing about it is you also deal more damage to champions which have more max HP than you. So that's super nice to shred tanks and shred bruises, which in high elo are played quite frequently at the moment. The recently buffed Death Stance is a super strong item if you just want to survive a little bit longer. Now if you go into the enemy team and they start bursting you down or trying to kill you, then Death Stance is a great addition to your build because it makes you survive the fight a little bit longer, but it also gives you that nice heal that scales off of bonus 80, which you get quite a lot of this build. So if you're not worried about having enough damage but rather about surviving and maybe getting out of the team fight again, then Death Stance is a great item, especially against very 80 heavy comps. Now Maw is kind of the same and does the same thing but against magic oriented teams. Maw gives you a huge shield that also scales off your bonus AD and also gives you Omnivamp once the shield actually procs. So this makes you be a little bit more tanky and survive the fight a little bit longer, which in some cases is all you need. Sometimes you already have enough damage and you just need to not die instantly. So that's a great item. Or can work really well in combination with LDR and with Kraken Slayer if you just want to shred tanks or these bruisers and want to have as much dueling power as possible and you're not really too worried about one-shotting people. Wits End kind of has the same effect. I don't think it's that great anymore, but if the enemy team is very magic damage heavy, but you want more damage and more attack speed, then Wits End is definitely a good item. Now if you're really cracked and you really want as much damage as you can also build Infinity Edge in combination with LDR or Essence Reaver. What you want to make sure though is that you have 40% crit when building Infinity Edge so that you land on 60%, otherwise the passive of Infinity Edge doesn't proc. Now what Infinity Edge allows you to do is pretty much just one-shot anything in the late game. Even stuff like tanks or bruises become very squishy in combination with LDR and Kraken Slayer. So if that is your main goal, you want to be 1v9, completely carry every game, this is a very good item, but you have to be careful because you aren't very tanky. And this is pretty much what my build looks like every game. The combination of having a lot of damage from Kraken Slayer, LDR and Ghostblade is super strong in combination with Death Dance and Maw, because not only are you very tanky, but you also have a lot of bonus AD, which makes the shield from Maw be very strong, and the healing from Death Dance is also very crazy. So this for me is the ideal build. Again, swap components out depending on what you need and you're good to go. Okay, so AP Shaco, also very interesting change in build. I know I said Horizon Focus is the best second item after Leandries, but it turns out I'm actually wrong. I thought it was very good, it turns out it's very bad. So I'm sorry for that one. I did genuinely believe it was the best, and I think at that time, because Cosmic Drive wasn't very good, I think it was a very good substitution for that, but it wasn't the best. And I was proven wrong by a spreadsheet that Shot Nicholson made, which kind of showed Demonic Embrace is the second item that you want to build after Leandries, because it has the most damage, it is very powerful, especially in the current meta. So build is kind of the same in the very beginning, apart from one minor little, difference. You actually build CDR boots now. This might be a lot to take in, but the reason we go CDR boots now is because we don't have enough spell haste in our items anymore, so we don't really get to build Sorcerer Shoes. And trust me, if I could, I would, but there's no way. You can't fit Sorcerer Shoes into any AP Shaco build anymore unless you want to totally grief your items, which honestly, don't do that. At the beginning of the game, just get your blue smite, get a potion. Honestly, on AP Shaco you can skip out on a potion, which makes it very easy to get the Ionian boots the first back. But that's something that you kind of need to see for yourself. Do you want the potion? Do you need the potion? Can you reliably get your Ionian boots first back? If not, you can try skipping out on a potion, and if you do, then just keep it. So as I said, ideal first back would be Lucidity boots, and if you can't get the Lucidity boots, just get the tier 1 boots and maybe an Amp Tome, or maybe get an Amp Tome and a Dark Seal, or get a Dark Seal and boots. It all depends on how much gold you have. And of course, always get a red trinket. So from here on, after you have your Ionian boots, you want to get your Leandries. Make sure, when building Leandries, always get the Fiendish Codex first. Don't ever get Lost Chapter, it's not very good in the jungle, it's overpriced. You don't really need the mana sustain because you're a jungler, so always get the Fiendish Codex if you can. Then of course, finish your Leandries, and this is where you get into Demonic Embrace. The build path here is very straightforward. Get the Blasting Wand and the Amp Tome before you get the Giant's Belt. Now after those two core items, you can adapt your build, but I usually always build Void Staff third. It just offers you the most damage, it offers you such great value for such little price, and no item, even Rowdons, comes even close to how much damage you deal. Because Shaco doesn't really care too much about AP scalings, he cares about dealing as much true damage as possible, because the box fires quite rapidly and has very high base damage, but it doesn't have a lot of scaling, so we don't really care about that too much. We would rather shred the enemy's magic resist and make the burn deal more damage and make our boxes or our clone explosion or our clone boxes deal more damage. Other great choices are stuff like Zhonya's if you need the extra survivability. If the enemy team maybe has 1 or 2 assassins, especially AD assassins, this can be really great. Or if you need to dodge something like a Karthus ult and you want to use your R offensively. Banshees can also work, not too big of a fan of it, but into very AP heavy comps. And if you want to block that first skill shot in a team fight because you get caught, I don't know, maybe that's something that happens on AP Shaco, which it shouldn't, but then I think Banshees can be a pretty good option. Morello is very good because it gives you pretty decent healing reduction. That you can proc quite easily at least, and 80 ability power is also pretty nice. 250 health, don't care too much about that, but we'll take it if it's free. Now if you are very far ahead, and trust me guys, I speak from experience, Magi's can be very good. You have to be careful though, because if you die, this item becomes somewhat useless. So make sure that if you have a very big lead, that you keep that lead. You should not die, not if you buy this item. So if you're confident in your mechanics and if you're confident in not dying, then Magi's is very good. But if you do die, this item is very bad. So, you have to decide yourself. And the last item that I would recommend is Rabadons. This is usually my 6th item after I already have my main components, because otherwise this item's not too great. But once you have Void Staff, this item is a lot more useful than before Void Staff. If you want to maximize your damage, you want to go Void Staff and then Rabadons. And this is usually what my full build looks like. Of course, the 2 main items right here, with a Void Staff after, my favorite build, and then Zhonya's for the extra survivability, and then a Rabadons for maximum damage in the very late game. So the skill order for AD Shaco is very straightforward. When you get a point in W at level 1, you then get a point in Q, then E, 2 more points in W for extra clear speed, of course take a point in R whenever possible, and then max E, max Q, and then max W. AP Shaco is very similar. You start off with W, then Q, then E, and then 2 more points in W, again max E, but now you want to max W instead of Q, then max Q, and a point in R, of course, whenever possible. Okay, cool. So the clear is probably what most people are interested as well. as the build. Now the clear has been the same for many months now. It's probably been years actually. So if you guys already know the clear, this is nothing new. Now the placement for these boxes is very specific, but there is a link in the description down below that helps you exactly put the boxes where they belong. You want to do race, and at the same time you want to do red. Finish off the chicken with one auto attack, queue back to the rep buff, and finish that one off with backstabs. Then you place the box over the Krug camp, queue over it, smite the big Krug, hit the medium Krugs to a HP that they are low enough for the box to finish them off. You then want to run to the wolf camp. Now here's the important part. You want to make a decision whether or not you want 2 points in your box or 1 point in the box and 1 point in E. This is based on the fact if you have any ganks available or if you are scared of getting invaded. If that is the case, make sure to get your E. The clear is roughly 3 to 4 seconds slower, so it's not a big deal, but if you want to maximize your clear speed, get a second point into W. So as promised, the blue buff clear. Now, this blue buff clear is the exact same on the opposite side of the map, just the box placement is slightly different. Again, the link in the description will take you to an Imgur album that shows you exactly where to place boxes if you have trouble with that. Now, the clue or the important thing about this clear is that if you do get a leash, you can honestly save the smite on this blue buff. You can then use it later on the rep buff, but in this case, because I am on my own, I have to smite the blue buff, otherwise this clear takes a bit too long and becomes super inefficient. You then want to do the grump, your second box will fear it into the first box, then you do the wolf camp. Now here, very important, your second box on the wolf camp is going to finish off the small wolves and the big wolf, so you can just run away from the camp, make sure to get them low enough, a bit of practice and you've got this down. Now after you do rep buff, again, usually you would have your smite here. In this case, you don't because, again, a solo clear. Now after you do Krugs, and the same thing with the wolves, your box will actually finish off the medium Krugs here if you place it correctly, and you can head towards Scuttle Crab. And that is pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section down below. I would highly appreciate it if you guys could check out the Twitch and my Discord server, link in the description down below. Thank you.